This is Beyond Business. Witness the real lives of Cranbrook's female entrepreneurs as they candidly tell their stories, their experiences, and their struggles in raw, revealing conversations. I am so pleased to be sitting here today with Lisa Jarvis. She is an accountant and an entrepreneur, and she has an incredible story of choosing to build a business that works for the life that she wants to live. So we're going to be diving into that today. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. So even as an entrepreneur, accounting is it's just a place that I don't even like to go. Mm-hmm. And I have the luxury of not necessarily having to think about it because my husband is an entrepreneur and he has a mind for numbers. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to have the mind for numbers. Mm-hmm. I get to think about the other things besides. So I don't even necessarily know what your designation is or even what that means. So why don't we talk about that first? What does it mean to be an accountant and what exactly do you do?
Okay. Can I first of all just say, though, that that's almost every conversation I've had with an entrepreneur starts that way. Most people, when they come to a consultation meeting with me, they'll sit down and they'll be flustered and then they'll be like, oh, I'm going to be your worst client ever. I hate numbers. I think it's part of being an entrepreneur, to be honest. So I just want to throw that out there because I think of a lot of entrepreneurs get this idea. They kind of know accounting's important, but they kind of either it's boring or it's uninteresting, or they have some sort of money story wrapped up why they're not good at it. They hated math in high school or they weren't good, whatever. So I just want to throw out there that I think that's a really normal way for that most entrepreneurs feel. And one of the things that I love most about my job is helping entrepreneurs to discover that that's not necessarily true about them. And that actually with a little bit of support and training and building out a little bit of a foundation, it's not only something you can learn, it's something that you can enjoy. And I have a saying in my little free Facebook group, even get excited about, because it's a way to see into your business what's working, what's not working, and use it as a tool for how you're going to reach your goals. So it's really actually quite a powerful business tool. It just gets wrapped up in this identity of boring, stuffy numbers.
Well, and I'm excited to hear about that aspect of your business because that is something that you've been doing as of lately is really fostering relationships with new entrepreneurs or small business owners and offering support for them and training so that accounting and numbers is more comfortable.
Yeah. And because I want to see business owners succeed, right? Like small business is the background of our economy. And yet as a small business owner, you have to wear 25 different hats. It's a lot to navigate. And I'll be the first to admit that perhaps my industry hasn't done the best job of being friendly to the average everyday entrepreneur and making that information accessible to them. So not that I'm going to fix it all by myself, but that is part of the passion of what drove me into the online education space is wanting to be able to bring some of that toolkit to the average entrepreneur.
Well, and it's interesting because I don't typically think of the way accountants go about life in the same way that entrepreneurs go about life.
Yep.
Because when I think about an entrepreneur, I think about somebody who's risking it all, head in, everything in all at once, not necessarily thinking all about every step along the way. Whereas when I think about accounting, I think about very pragmatic steps forward, very intentional, maybe a little risk adverse. But you're both of these things.
Well, I would say I feel like I'm probably an entrepreneur first and an accountant second. So to circle back to your first question, which I haven't answered yet. Yes, I am a designated accountant. I'm a CPA, CGA, and what that means is Chartered Professional Accountant. So that's the board in Canada that oversees all of the accountants. If you are going to go out into the world or into Canada and provide accounting services, they've basically given you that rubber stamp of, yes, you've met a certain level of competence and been able to demonstrate that. And then, of course, they also are our oversight board. So there's a couple different ways that you can be an accountant in Canada. I'm in what's called public practice, which is what I think most people think of an accountant. It's where you go to get your tax returns filed, right? There's the office, you go in. So that's like the public facing accountant. And we have a whole board that oversees us and comes in and looks at our files, makes sure we're taking the courses that we need to take to stay up to date, all of those things. So
because tax law would change. So
Yes,
you have to be
yes,
up to date on
yes.
what's happening with tax laws.
Yes.
So that is why
Yes.
there's a board that's regulating this.
Yes, and also ethics, because the backbone of what an accountant is, it's based on honesty and integrity. If we don't have ethics, we really have no value, because we are putting numbers together, whether that's tax returns that are going to the government or financial statements that are going to a bank that might lend to somebody or investors or whatever. We're saying this is what happened and we can't lie, right? So ethics is a really big part of what we get oversight on, is to make sure that we're acting in integrity. So that's what the letters mean, is basically that you've that you know what you're talking about and that you're not advising into areas that you shouldn't be.
And then when people outside see your stamp of approval, they can trust that the information that you're providing is accurate.
Yeah.
So they can make informed decisions about whether they're going to lend money or whether this expansion makes sense or whether the government has gotten their fair share or...
Yes, I will throw out, because I'm an accountant now, I'm going to get really into the technicalities. There are different levels of engagement, which requires different levels of us double checking. And so not necessarily like a compilation import, which is the most common set of financial statements that a small business would get. We're not like calling every vendor to confirm that what they've put through is true, like in an audit where you are doing a lot of substantive work. For the most part, we are working with the owner. We're doing some sniff tests. We're making sure that they are following the rules based on the best understanding of what we get to look at. So I do need to be a little bit careful, because just because we throw a set of statements out, you do need to read the reports that go with it, because there are standards. Like everything we do is directed by very specific work. And so different levels of engagement will provide different levels of assurance of what has actually happened. But at the end of the day, we aren't supposed to be associated with anything false or misleading. That's at the end of the day what we're called to do.
Tell me your story from when you knew you wanted to go into accounting, you got your education, and then where did you end up?
I'm from a family with a lot of entrepreneurs. Most of my family's members make their money through a small business. And this is quite a range. You know, I have some like service providers, they're on their own. I have one uncle who is actually a billionaire in the commercial real estate space, and a whole bunch of people in between. Some that have done very well, some that have struggled. But that was what I grew up with as being normal. That your relationship with work and earning a living was tied to business. I love entrepreneurs. I love the way entrepreneurs think. I didn't necessarily think I was going to be an entrepreneur when I started, but I had an aptitude for math. And also with my family, I saw that like the numbers side and specifically managing cash flow was make or break. And that even within my own family, there was quite a variety of comfort with accounting and numbers. And so it felt like something that maybe I'd be good at, but also something that I could see a huge value in, because I really wanted to do a role where I could help people. I actually seriously considered becoming a teacher before I became an accountant, but ultimately decided I worked at a church for a while and hung out with a lot of kids and loved it. But kind of realized that at the end of the day, as much as I love people, in my core, I'm also an introvert. And so peopling all day, I would need to go home and be quiet. And if I wanted to be a mom and be invested with my kids, that probably wasn't going to work. So I wanted to pick something that kind of let me be introverted in my work so I could be extroverted all the rest of the time.
I just want to pause on that, because like what an incredible self-awareness at that time when you were probably quite young and didn't necessarily have a family. Like I think a lot of times we figure that piece out later on when we have the family. Like, oh, I need to shift things so that I can be here for my family. But for you to know even beforehand what it would mean for your family and knowing yourself that you're going to need to be able to have alone time so that you have energy to be with your family, to know that even before you had a family is incredible. And then to choose a career that would allow you to have this life that you knew you wanted, which it sounds like was to be able to be a parent.
Definitely was a core value for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's kind.
Okay, so you have this realization that
Yes.
numbers are a great thing, and there's this part of you that also wants to help.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, did you see that at that time, that you could see the need for it because you saw the need within close family members, and therefore you could see that you would be helping other people that were like your family, or was there a motivation to help the people that you already knew?
I think it was just a factor in what led me to it when I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I thought it would be kind of fun to work with entrepreneurs. And then as I started going through the accounting courses, I really enjoyed it. So just a funny little sidebar about me. One of my favorite ways to kind of decompress and have fun is like board games or puzzles. And so my husband and I, we do a lot of those things. And what I liked about the strategy of that is also what I love about accounting. Is it's a similar feeling when everything's coming together. So once I got into it, I really fell in love with it and really quite enjoyed the work. And another really neat thing about accounting that I don't know many people hear about when they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, there's a huge amount of different things you can do as an accountant. There's not one path. There's probably like 20 different paths you could take your accounting career with. So that appealed to me as well, that you can work part-time, you can work full-time, you can work in government, you can work with small business owners, you can work in a big firm doing like really intense audits, you can work in a small firm, you can work from home, you can work for yourself. Like there's just a lot of flexibility that it provides. And I think flexibility has always been one of my values. I like to be able to set my own agenda on how I want to live. And so that really appealed to me as well.
Well, just knowing that there were some things you knew about yourself that you wanted to be able to have energy for your family, your future family, but also knowing that piece about yourself that you like to have control and be able to change things up. So accounting offered a variety of options that you could potentially pursue.
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward for me how you ended up in Vancouver.
Okay.
Running a business.
Yes, fair enough. So I ultimately did want to work with clients. So to become an accountant, you have to work for somebody else. Part of how you get those letters is you have to work in another organization and another CPA. At that time I was CGA, so that's why I have both, as there was different designations in Canada and now they're all one. But you have to have another accountant review your work and certify your work. So I first went to big business. I worked at TELUS for a number of years, but I knew I wanted to work with entrepreneurs. So I eventually wanted to get over to that more traditional accounting world. And I eventually did, worked for a lovely firm. I worked for them for many years. But my favorite part was always when I actually got to talk to the clients. It's still my favorite part. And when you work for someone else, you just don't get to do that as much. So I knew eventually I wanted to have my own firm. And then an opportunity came up. A very dear friend of mine who was also an accountant, she ended up inheriting a firm. One of her mentors from when she was younger, who she'd worked for many years, he ended up being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And it was pretty serious. And so she left her very prestigious job in Alberta and moved to BC to basically run his firm for him while he died. I mean, the hope was that he would live, but he unfortunately did not. So after that, she was pretty devastated. That was a big thing to go through. It was almost like a second parent or grandparent to her. He was a very important part of her life. And she asked me if I would want to come along for the ride with her to make a firm together and really grow something that we were both excited about. And we were very aligned in values and how we wanted to work. So my husband and I had some conversations and decided, yeah, we're going to go for it. So we moved to Vancouver, and we started that work. And at that time, he was working full time and I was working part time, because we had some young kids already. And so with that move, we made the switch. He took a part-time role with his organization, and I stepped up to entrepreneur full-time.
Wow. Now, did you, because this was a pre-established firm, did you have to buy into this business, or was it a pretty easy transition in the sense that she just said, hey, let's do this together?
Well, I actually ended up getting all my own clients. So I came alongside her, and in the sense that we shared resources, we shared software, we shared office space, we hired staff, shared staff. So we did we were partners, like we ran the business together. But basically the files I worked on and the clients that I met with were ones that I found that I had built a relationship with, and she dealt with hers. So it was just something that I built. And one of the kind of amazing things about accounting, which all my clients that I work with, this is, I think, a bit unique. The demand is greater than the supply. So I haven't had to try that hard to get clients. I'm usually turning people away because they're not a good fit. So it didn't take very long to fill up my roster.
Right. Yeah. So you're in Vancouver.
Yeah.
You've built a business.
Yeah.
You're working full time. So you've transitioned from being at home for half the time and working half time to working full time.
Yeah. More than full time.
More than full time. Yes, because as you just said, there's more work than you could do.
Yeah.
Tell me what happens next.
Okay, so I hit burnout, honestly. So this wasn't an overnight thing. This was, I think, 7 years in the making. And in the meantime, one of my children went through a very extreme health crisis. Like, we pretty much lived at Children's Hospital for 6 months, and then she was in and out of it for 2 years. So there was a lot going on at home and then a lot going on at work, because building a business is also, I think, more intense than even just running a business, because we were in growth mode. So I maybe didn't recognize that I wasn't taking care of myself, because I had these 3 little people that I'm a mom to. I'm not going to not show up for them. I had these clients and these staff that I felt a responsibility for. I'm not going to not show up for them. So the easiest person not to show up for was myself. And so I just didn't realize you couldn't hustle forever. And eventually my body said no. And so I started dealing with health issues, which, to be honest, I've come a long way, but I'm still dealing with health issues. It's not even resolved as of yet, and it's been many, many years. But it really taught me how important it is. And I tell all my clients this now as an entrepreneur, like, self-care is actually pivotal, because if you are unwell, the business is unwell. So that was going on. Also, my husband, who had been with his work for 15 years, and work is the wrong word. This was a vocation. This was a calling. This was his family. This was a big deal. He realized, for a number of reasons, that he needed to step away. And it was almost like a death. It was quite a big thing for him to process, and even for me, because I also loved the organization and many of the people in it. So we had some stuff going on, my health, his work, and really trying to figure out, is this how we want to live? And because I had been hustling so hard in the business, even though I went into accounting to be a great mom, we already talked about that, I wasn't being the mom I wanted to be. I was missing soccer games. I was missing school plays. And I didn't want to do that anymore. It's like I just woke up one day and realized, oh my goodness, I'm missing it. Like, they're only these little people for so long, and I don't want to look back in 20 years and realize I missed it. Like, that was even the whole reason I started this, but somehow it got lost with everything. And so my husband and I both, we took some time to really figure out together what we wanted our family to be. And I had some very real conversations with my business partner. I am so thankful to her for her grace to me, because another thing I've seen as an accountant is many partnerships fall apart, and it is unfortunately usually quite messy. And I'm very proud to say she's still an incredibly dear friend. We talk a lot. She is part of the will of managing my kids' future life, and I know I'm part of her kids' future as well. So I say that's to her credit, because she gave me the space to make it okay. And I didn't step away in a heartbeat. I really did take time to make that transition so that she wouldn't be negatively impacted, my clients wouldn't be negatively impacted. Like there was a time of transition, but what was really pushing for it was just that realization that I was living in a way that, one, didn't align with my values, and two, wasn't actually sustainable. And so I had to make a change.
Wow. It's funny because when entrepreneurs think about business, it's almost like a baby. You know?
It is another child.
Yeah. Well, you put so much into it.
Yeah.
And you're so invested.
Yeah.
And I find it remarkable that you were willing to walk away from that piece because it wasn't really a baby.
Right. Right.
When it's compared with your babies and
Right.
with the life that you're trying to create. And I think it's remarkable that you chose to do that. Because as much as we say we need to take care of ourselves, it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Or it can be difficult.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Yeah.
And there was something else that you mentioned, which I just want to go back to, because you say this to entrepreneurs. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I trick other entrepreneur women that are friends of mine is tell them, well, if you take care of yourself, you're actually taking better care of your business.
Yeah.
And you're taking better care of your family if you're taking care of yourself, because then you can show up in the way that you want. So if you can't accept that you need to take care of yourself, think of it as the best way to take care of my business is by doing this piece for myself, or the best way to take care of my family is to be here and to be healthy.
I think that's really smart advice, because as women, we tend to know it, but it's really hard to prioritize it until you reflect it in that lens. And then you're like, you just see why. You see the reason.
So the physical pieces that you're working through now, do you feel like are stemming from that time, or?
It's hard to know for sure. I've been working with doctors and naturopaths and done a lot of tests. And so there's still things we're looking at, but it does seem like stress is a much bigger beast than we like to think it is. And I can see, even in what I'm dealing with now, even though it pales in comparison to where I was, I think my nervous system is still not regulating like it could or should or did at one point. So definitely my stress levels are lower. Definitely I'm healthier for a number of reasons. But I think my nervous system maybe still has a few scars that it hasn't fully dealt with.
I mean, sometimes it takes time to get so dysregulated. Sometimes it's more instantaneous, but it's years of habits.
It was. And to be really honest, when I look back, I was in crisis. Like I mentioned very casually that thing about my daughter, like that, it was a trauma. Like it was pretty serious what we went through. And I was just in survival mode. And I don't think, even when that resolved, I don't think I came out, because the business was still pulling at me so much that I maybe didn't have the self-awareness to recognize, oh, you're just reacting to everything. And so even though we weren't actually in crisis anymore, there was still a lot of demands on my time. And so I didn't recognize that I was still operating out of that space. So anyone who's ever been in a more significant, I mean, I think most people have something they can think of. You kind of just go into this mode of like, let's just get through it, right? Like, what do we need to do to keep people safe, keep people alive?
Yeah,
right?
keep people alive.
Yeah, like you just are, your body can do it. You figure it out. But the idea is you're supposed to come back out of that and go back to,
I'm not in stress.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
from the tiger anymore.
right, right. And I think I just never came back out of it. Because even though there wasn't a crisis anymore, somehow I didn't recognize that my body was still in this heightened state, and there was still demands for my time. I mean, it's so silly, but like emails and social media can cause a reaction in your body, like a tiger's chasing you if you let them. Like it's not logical, and hopefully we don't do that. But if you're already in that heightened state, I think it was just very easy to stay in that heightened state. And I didn't recognize that that's what was happening until my body started to tell me, hello, we cannot live here. We're not designed to live here, right? This is supposed to be a short period and then come back to this more balanced state of living.
Well, and when that health crisis with your daughter was so extended, you
Yes.
know, it's not,
Yes.
it wasn't one trip to the hospital that lasted a couple weeks and then you seen progress and improvement, right? It was, did you say 2 years?
Yeah, 6 months where it was very serious. But yeah, it was about 2 years of, I would say, like, crisis is happening.
Yeah. So trying to get your body to recognize that you're no longer in crisis when a crisis lasts that long, because even the change from the 6 months to the 2 years, that would not, even that transition wouldn't have put you back into everything's okay. Like you're keyed up, and then you're keyed up in general because this just happened, and is this going to happen again, or what will we do now? And then the work demands stayed the same.
Yes.
Well, all that was going on.
If anything, they increased because, you know, sometimes I couldn't deal with work. So then when you go back, you know, there's more.
So you knew you weren't okay.
It took a while. But yeah, I eventually woke up and realized, okay, this isn't what I actually want. This isn't in line with what I said I was building and who I want to be and the parent I want to be and even the accountant I want to be, really. Yeah.
So talk me through how you ended up in Cranbrook.
Okay. So after we made the decision to step away from the firm and my husband had stepped away from his family/job, we realized that we didn't actually have to stay in Vancouver. Now, we loved Vancouver. Our kids were doing really well. There was a lot of good things happening. But, you know, anyone who's watching this from Canada, I think you know that Vancouver's real estate market is cuckoo bananas, and the cost of living there is rather high. So we wanted to consider, do we want to stay here or do something else? And my kids were at the age where we could still move, but I felt like the next season we needed to be stationary. And that was really going to be the period that they would probably think of as their childhood for the rest of their lives, because it was going to be like their junior high school years. I know when I think about my childhood, I tend to think about those years more than the really early ones.
There's a lot of growth that happens in those ages, and the connection to community and friends is so much more important in pre-adolescence and adolescence than it is when you're little. Yeah. So you knew you wanted to, wherever you landed, it needed to be permanent to get the kids through that phase.
Yeah. And so we took some time. We did a road trip to California, visited my uncle in Arizona, visited some friends in California. We considered Calgary and Kelowna and a bunch of options. We really kind of threw a whole bunch of things on the wall. We rented a couple of different living places just to try different types of houses. Lived even in a 2-bedroom plus den apartment with my 3 kids, which I loved and everyone else hated.
You're like, finally, everybody's close and we're just together.
Oh my gosh, I could clean that thing in like 45 minutes. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But what came out of that? And really talked as a family about like, what do we want? What matters to us? And my husband, he's worked with like that work that he was in was a nonprofit, and he's now does coaching and counseling. So he's definitely a little bit more touchy-feely than the average guy, and so really knew the language of how to talk to kids about values, and really kind of led us through that time of thinking about what mattered to us. And my kids really wanted a big house that they can invite their friends to. And I was like, really?
Do you though? Are you sure?
Because that means we can't stay in Vancouver. But we were not really quite sure where we were going to land. So I had kept a block of work, my fractional CFO work. I had always kind of done that. So most accountants in public practice, they're really just doing year ends and tax returns. But I always saw the need for my clients maybe needing someone in-house a little bit. And so I had a block of clients that I would meet with every week or every month or sometimes just every quarter, but kind of doing that bigger strategy piece that you would often hire a more senior role in-house for. But if you only need them 6 hours a month, you're not going to hire someone on staff. So I was fulfilling that role for a number of clients. So I kept that work because that paid the bills while we were figuring out what we were doing. And we still owned a house in Cranbrook. We actually still own 2 houses in Cranbrook that were rented out. And our tenants gave notice to be out on the exact day that we had to be out of the place that we were renting, which just felt a little bit like serendipitous. Like, that's interesting. So we hadn't actually considered coming back to Cranbrook. Even though we had loved it for many years, it just hadn't, all those other places we'd considered and decided against, we'd never thought about Cranbrook. And once we kind of opened our hearts to it, you know, we'd spent 12 months talking about what mattered to us, and it was just like the pieces fell into place, and we knew that this is where we needed to come back to. So we moved into that house, which gave us kind of a cushion time for the kids to go to school, make sure everyone's settled.
Yeah.
Everyone loved it. And so then we ended up buying that house that those kids wanted. So they're pretty happy.
You know, what I love about that is the way that you and your husband approached family life. Because it's very easy for parents to make decisions. And to just decide this is what we're doing. And I think it's incredible that it was the process of where are we going and what matters to us was about the 5 of you, not about the 2 of you.
Well, thank you. And it's funny because our realtor actually made a comment about that. He's like, you guys really bought this house as a family, hey? And I remember thinking, like, that was a funny comment. Like, don't everybody?
Doesn't everybody operate like this? Well, sometimes you don't know that you're doing things different because you're doing what you know you need to do.
Yes.
And you assume that everybody is, it's like that assumption of similarity.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So the kids are happy because they've got this house that they can have friends over.
Yes.
And you brought some of your clients from your Vancouver firm and essentially just walked away from the firm.
I didn't sell it. I just made sure everyone was taken care of, and I walked away. Yeah.
I want to pause on that because that speaks volumes to me about the way that you think of work and the way that you think about business. Because you could have sold pieces of your business, right? Like you could have approached that transition differently, but it seemed like it was more important for you just to leave and go in this new phase of life.
Well, I do think that I value relationships more than money. You can always make more money. You can. Money is a renewable resource. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but it is. Whereas relationships are like a gift, right? And I think we have to hold those with the value that they deserve.
That's a beautiful thought. Especially because as entrepreneurs, we can get so focused on making money because that's the purpose of a business, right?
You don't have a business if you're not profitable. That is important. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But to recognize, even as an accountant, that money isn't the most important piece.
No, money's just a tool.
Yeah, and not even close.
No.
To being the most important piece.
Yeah.
So now you're in Cranbrook.
Yeah.
And you've brought some of your clients with you on the strategic piece.
Yes. So, I mean, my firm is 100% virtual. So, yes, I am in Cranbrook. I do not have a staff member in Cranbrook. I do have a handful of clients in Cranbrook, which is lovely. It's fun to actually meet clients in person because for the most part, it's on Zoom calls that I'm meeting with people. But yeah, it's a fully virtual, paperless firm. And
you're not here just doing work on your own. Like since you've showed back up here, you've been
I've been busy building again. Yes.
You've gone back to doing what you did in Vancouver to some degree.
Yes, to some degree, but I would say a much more intentional version. Because I did somewhat learn my lesson. Yeah.
And I love that piece about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what's amazing about being an entrepreneur is you created this,
Yeah.
this business.
Yeah.
And so if it's not serving you and you want to recreate something different,
Yeah.
guess what? You can.
Yeah.
And you know you can because you
Yeah.
created it in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's where you are now.
Yes, that's where I am now. And one of the things that maybe you've heard it through what I've said already that I've always been passionate about is just helping entrepreneurs step into their own power and their own understanding with their numbers, and knowing that there is a block of entrepreneurs that are there, but I think there's a bigger block of entrepreneurs that are not. And so I started my online education piece of my business as kind of a passion project to try and build out some more support for entrepreneurs that want to learn and grow, but need a little help to be able to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that piece has come along with arriving in Cranbrook. The online education piece.
Yes,
that is
it has.
something that has grown because you've been here and have had more time.
Yes, exactly.
And okay, so it's a passion project. So what does that mean when you say that?
It
Because
means
I'm like, is passion project meaning that it's like a hobby, but or is this? How are you seeing this? Because businesses start in all different places,
Yes.
and some take
Yes.
longer to grow, and
Yes.
some are side hustles before they actually
yes.
become substantial enough that they're a real
Yes.
that we're able to let other things go. So,
Yes.
what do you mean by a passion
So
project?
I would say I have two pillars of my business. I have the fractional CFO / traditional accounting, tax returns, and where you're really working as an external accountant to businesses, helping them navigate. And then I have the online education piece. And I call it a passion project because I would say, whereas this one over here, my time equals money, over here it doesn't necessarily. So yes, it is making money. It is a revenue center in my business, but there's a lot of my time there that is not being compensated, and that's just because I really like to do it, and I really feel like it's making a difference. So we're growing it, and I think eventually it will become a more profit center. But yeah, I call it a passion project because right now I'm doing it because I love it more, and I see the value in it. More than that, I'm buying groceries with the money that it's making.
Well, and that touches on something that I think is really important as entrepreneurs, because when you own your own business, run your own business, you have to do all aspects of the job.
Yeah.
Unless you can afford to hire parts out. And sometimes you can afford in certain seasons, and other seasons you can't afford to hire pieces out. So having things that are on our desk that really give us fuel and joy really matters, because it enables, well, I find for myself, it enables me to do all of the other things that maybe I don't really want to do that are a part of my business that I have to do because I'm a business owner. So I think that having those things that you get to be creative, because creativity is huge for me, or that you feel kind of that flood of, wow, this is great. This is exactly what I'm meant to do, or I'm making a difference, or whatever it is that generates for you, I think gives us stamina in business for longevity's sake.
Well, and that just brings up for me, I think, the relationship with work that entrepreneurs have compared to the relationship with work that the employee has. I think for us as entrepreneurs, I don't know that work is always the right word, albeit there is work in what we do. I like the word vocation because there is still work, and there's lots of days that feel like work, but there's also like a joy and maybe even a calling to some aspects of what I do, and I think to what most entrepreneurs do, that light us up in a way that's, yes, about earning money, but it's about more than that.
It's almost as though there's more opportunity for value alignment. I mean, there's also the opportunity to, I've found in my experience with having a business, sometimes and it sounds like this happened to you a little bit in Vancouver, you create this beast and then you're like, whoa, this isn't really quite what I wanted, or this isn't going the way that I wanted. But at least initially when you start building, there's this sense of, wow, this is exactly what I was meant to do. And I can tweak this because it fits with my life in the way that I want it to.
And I think the opportunity that, I mean, sometimes you're trying things in business and sometimes you try it and you didn't like it. And so you can actually stop doing it. And sometimes you try it and it's amazing. And it's like, how do I do more of that? Right? Like I think we're always growing and cultivating with a business. Like it's almost like it's a tree, right? Like you can keep pruning it, and you can also help it to flower in other places. And there's something really beautiful and exciting about that it is a living being, that there's so much hope there, that even if you hate 85% of what your business is, if there's 15% you love, like just keep going there. And you might still have to run the other side to buy those groceries, but every day, every week, every quarter, if you are being strategic, you can continue to build and shrink as you see fit.
I love that picture of a tree, because I'm like, automatically where my mind goes is, ooh, what are we going to graft in? Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like something that isn't even necessarily a part of it now, like something completely foreign, we can bring in to create growth in a new way.
Absolutely, because that's the most exciting part of the SWOT analysis to me, right? Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's that opportunities piece. It's like, what's going to happen tomorrow in the world that we can build a business around, right? Like there's always new opportunity. And that's one of the other things I love about entrepreneurship. I remember when COVID hit, and I had a whole block of clients that lost their businesses overnight, and it was scary and it was hard. And then 6 months later, I'm talking to them, and this is more than one. This is many, many, many different people. And they've all pivoted into something new. They've built a new business, some of them around COVID stuff, right? Like
selling masks.
Yeah, I had one guy, he was working in events and lost his business because events didn't run anymore. So then he started making those plastic screens for restaurants once the restaurants were allowed to reopen, so that they could serve clients again. Like that, I think that's what's so cool about entrepreneurs, is like, you have to grieve those moments, but then also you can just wake up tomorrow and pick a new direction and get excited again.
Wow, that I'm just pausing because I heard you say you have to grieve those moments.
Yes.
I think sometimes there's so much pressure to keep going and to keep growing and to keep pushing, and what's the next thing, and how do we stay relevant? How do we stay current? How do we continue to generate a profit?
Yes.
But there is a lot of loss.
Yes. With all of the good that comes with being an entrepreneur, there's also risk. And that means sometimes there's loss. And no, I do think it's really important to grieve. I think our bodies will grieve whether we let them or not. So it's better for us to have that outlet and deal with it and then be able to move on. I think whenever we push emotions down, doesn't usually result in good
Doesn't
things.
usually work out. Usually ends up in something physical happen that isn't very good, or emotional, or relational.
Yeah.
How are you safeguarding yourself now? Because, and what I'm going back to is your word on you burnt out, and there were physical consequences for growing something that you loved, that you were intentional about, and you were doing business with one of your besties.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Right? And I mean, life threw you a curveball with your daughter's health that you couldn't anticipate coming. And so now you're in a new situation, you're getting things set up, you're feeling excited about your work, you've got your passion project, the kids are where they said they wanted to be. How do you safeguard yourself? Because you are a person who has that mindset about growth and about...
No, I definitely have the tendency to do it again. So two things come up. The first is a limitation that frustrates me constantly, and the second is very intentional. So the first one is my body just won't let me anymore. If I try to hustle, like I stay up super late working on something, guess what? I don't get to feel good the next day. Like my body gives me very quick feedback when I'm pushing too hard, and I have learned to trust and love my body. I used to like really want to be a machine.
Okay.
And so any of my humanity like bugged me, and I just tried to ignore it, which is how I got burned out, obviously.
Like there's a reason that happened.
So I've learned, no, like my body is part of me, and I love my body. And if my body's giving me a warning signal, I want to care for that and listen to that. I'm getting better at listening. Still not perfect at it, which is why the intentional piece, which is to have voices in my life that I trust, that know me and will call me on things. So I have a coach that I work with, and I picked her because she's a sales coach, but she's also deals with a chronic illness and really understands the frustration and also the beauty that comes with weakness in the body. And so she's a really great voice for me. I also have a husband who knows me and loves me and is not afraid to be honest with me. And he will very often tell me to stop it, go to bed.
Well, because you've touched on something that I think is a piece of entrepreneur, that that growing, that pushing, that hustling piece. Like that's usually where the successful business comes out of, is that willing to work and the energy that comes out of working.
Yes.
Right? Like it's like it refuels and it becomes this like circle.
Yes.
So you touched on those two pieces. So recognizing that you have limitations and listening to your body when your body is actually communicating to you, rather than just being like, oh, don't worry, we'll sleep tomorrow. But I love that other piece that you said about having voices, because entrepreneurship, you can be alone.
Yes.
You can be doing your work alone, meaning that the people that you work with are your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And your clients. And not necessarily having a peer in the work. So being able to bring other people around you that can kind of be a voice of reason to say, hey, are you okay?
I think it's really important. So I would encourage all entrepreneurs to build a community. And I think when I found a group of other entrepreneurs to kind of connect with, it made a huge difference in how quickly I could recognize things that were going wrong, and also ideas for how to do things differently. So I joined a peer mentorship group years ago and got so much out of it. So I've always wanted to ensure that that's like a part of my month, is that I'm connecting with other entrepreneurs in a space where we can be real about what's going on. That's looked a lot of different ways at different times, but I do think community is really, really important, because you're right. It can be very lonely as an entrepreneur, and depending who else is in your life, they may have no understanding for what you're going through, because it is very unique highs and lows as an entrepreneur. And so having other entrepreneurs who really get it, that you can be honest with, like if you have a bad day, you can just be honest about it. Or when you have a win, like they'll actually understand how big of a deal that win is, right? And you can celebrate together. It makes such a big difference to have community.
Well, and what that success means. When somebody understands, they can read between the lines of what it took to get that success. It validates it even more.
It's bringing up a funny memory. I had this little Slack group. There was 4 of us, all female entrepreneurs, similar revenue line. And I remember one day somebody got their first hater comment, and we celebrated that hater comment, because when you get to a certain level, there's going to be haters on social media. And that's something that I think in isolation could really make you question or feel bad. But to be able to bring it to a group that you can laugh about it together and be like, yeah, you're growing, you got your first hater, was really pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it changes the lens that you're viewing the situation from when you have somebody else that says this is normal, or this is worth celebrating, or I understand why that was hard.
Yes.
It kind of, and it also enriches it.
Yeah.
It enriches this piece because things are always richer when they're shared.
Yeah. That's true.
So there's that component to it too. Yeah. Now, when you first went back into the firm in Vancouver, you went from part-time to full-time.
Yes.
Now back in Cranbrook, you're full-time.
Yes.
And your husband is part-time, or less than part-time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're the breadwinner in your family.
Yes, I am.
So tell me how that works. Because a lot of times, especially in traditional families, it's not the woman that is the primary breadwinner. And I think that's changing. I have quite a few friends that are like you, that they are the breadwinner and their husbands are either at home or they're the support, and they bring the supporting finances. Yeah. But in a small town like Cranbrook, that's less common.
That's probably true. Yep.
So
yeah, I think he ran into a lot more dads at play dates in Vancouver than he would here.
than he did here. So how are
Yeah.
you navigating that space?
I think it's just based out of our values and how we operate as a couple, honestly. It was a very natural progression. And you're just really making me think, too, about like, oh, yeah, how did that happen? Because you're right. I guess you were right. He does work, but it's more, he works in areas that he's passionate about. It's less about earning money and more about building something he's passionate about. For the most part, my business is what pays our bills. And his kind of gives us some extras. So when he left that role, he didn't go back to any sort of employment after that point. And instead, he has his own kind of side small business doing coaching and consulting, which he's very good at, very passionate about. It's doing really cool work in the world. But a combination of where my health was at, we really recognized that to us as a couple, having one parent be hands-on with the kids was really important. So we have had part-time child support at different stages of life. We have very involved grandparents on both sides, which is beautiful. But we really did want one parent to be doing drop-off and pick-up and coaching the soccer team and like being quite involved. And just recognize that with my health, I only had so many hours of good hours in the day. And so there was less hours I could work. And when we just looked at the numbers, what I could earn per hour doing what I do versus what was available to him, it just made sense that I would be the one to do the work and he would take more of the family stuff, which he had already taken on more than maybe like the average stereotypical dad. And when we first made that transition to me being full-time and him to part-time, you know, I still had a lot of things on my list, but over the years, he took more and more and more to the point that now when I see those silly memes on Facebook, I actually identify more with the male than the female because my husband does everything. I'm like, oh yeah, I probably should have cleaned up the kitchen once this week. Like he's so on it.
It seems like you guys have really navigated this quite easily.
I think so.
But
yeah.
But I think that really speaks to the strength of your relationship in that you trust each other.
Yeah.
And you recognize that sacrifices are going to have to be made to have the family life that you want.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's some loss for you.
Oh, for sure.
Being the breadwinner.
Yeah, there are moments where I wish I had more time in the week to be with them, for sure. Like, I definitely have a much better schedule than I used to. Like, I go to the soccer games and I go to the school plays and but it's true. Like, I'm not doing school pickup most days, so I don't know all the other parents from the class, right? Like, that you do when you do pickup every day, right? So sometimes I run into someone at the store and I'm like, oh, I think
how do I know you?
To school with my kid and I can't remember your name, right? So yeah, you're right. There is some loss because I don't think we can actually have everything. There's always this thing, how do you have it all? I don't think you can have it all. But you can have a lot if you're like intentional about what matters. And so, yeah, I think I don't want to paint that our marriage has been rosebud the whole time. We've definitely had our low points. We've definitely have our hard stuff that we've had to work through, but we've worked through it. And I know he has my back and I think he knows I have his. And so, marriage is work. There's times where it's been hard, but it's also like the best relationship I've ever experienced on planet Earth, that this person knows me. And that means he knows all the ugly pieces too. Right?
And is willing to love me.
And actually likes me too.
Right?
Like, how amazing for someone to know everything about you and think you're great. Even when they know the stuff that you don't even like to show other people, right? And
or that you don't like about yourself.
Yeah. So no, I'm very thankful for him. I think he's an incredible person. And probably the way we navigated that was more to do with him and his own security in his masculinity than anything I did. Although I did give him his space to process it. Like, I recognized when he was grieving, I didn't try to fix that for him. I tried to be understanding, right? And give him what he needed. But I think it's more about, he's very confident. He knows who he is.
Well, and because it was shared decision
Yes,
making.
that's true. We did decide together. That's a good point. It's not like I said, hey, by the way, I'm going to do this and get on board. No, we did decide together.
Yeah, and because I think that sets the groundwork for, can we move in this direction? Yeah, we all want to move in this. We think we can, or there's just more space there for allowing people to have feelings and thoughts and concerns when it is shared.
Yeah.
Well, and it's giving you the life that you wanted to create collectively.
Yes.
So that piece there also makes those things and those sacrifices easier. Like those pieces of, I maybe don't get to see my kids quite as much or be involved as I would want to be, but knowing that because of what I'm doing for work, it's enabling my kids to have the life. They can play on the soccer teams, or they can go away to tournaments, or, you know, it's kind of stepping back and seeing that full picture of what you guys have created together.
Yes, and I think it's also made me really think about quality over quantity as a parent, and realizing that maybe I don't have all the time with them that I want. So then when I am with them, let's make it count, right? Like, what matters to them? What's their love language? Where do they want me to show up? What's meaningful to them? How do I impart values and things that I want them to have in their lives? Making sure, and I'm not perfect at this at all, but that's my intention, is to try to really make it count when I can.
I think that's an interesting way to look at it, quality over quantity, because I think you can look at it the reverse too. Like, I'm going to be there all the time, right? Like that's a classic stay-at-home mom. I'm going to be there all the time, and it doesn't mean that every minute that I'm there, they're getting the best of me. But because I'm there all the time, it's going to build a solid relationship. And then the flip side of it, which is what you're doing, is I can't be there all the time. So when I am there, when I can be there, I'm going to really be there. And I think both of those, or any other mix, can create that solid foundation where kids feel loved and feel secure and have that base to explore and be creative, right?
Yeah, and I guess really knowing who your kids are as people. Like, you have 5, I have 3. My 3 are drastically different from each other. They need very different things in the parenting. But I think all of us as parents, knowing who we are and knowing who our kids are, it's going to look different for everybody because we're different humans. And being okay to make a choice that's right for you, even if it's not right for somebody else.
Well, and what has stood out for me in this conversation thus far is you seem to have a really good sense of balance in your life. And what I mean by that, when I say you have balance, is you've taken these different parts that matter to you and you've incorporated that, even adding the piece of the online training, right? Like, that was a passion piece. It's something that you're interested in, and you've created space in your life so that you have that passion, so that you can pour back into entrepreneurs, which really matters to you. And you've shifted your work in order that you can care for your family, because you've always known that having a family and caring for a family matters. And then the piece about how you and your husband have navigated what home life looks like, and how you've stepped back and allowed him to kind of run the house. Right? That is all of these things are contributing to you living the life that it seems like that you want to be living, not just for yourself, but for the people that you work with and for your family.
Well, it's very kind. And I would say you have quite a way of seeing the beauty in things and articulating it. So thank you for those words.
Yeah, I'm thankful that you're here. I think you're a fascinating woman, and I think you're fascinating because of the way that you've navigated your work life. And it's funny that you brought up that piece about how I've always said we can't have it all. I remember hearing you speak you were on some television show, and you were on a panel, and there was a whole bunch of women. It was like some type of news show for Vancouver. And it seemed like the premise of the show, not that this was the premise, but women were talking about how to have it all. How to be a mom, how to work, how to be competitive, how to do all these things, how to take care of yourself. And I remember you saying, well, I don't think that way. You can't have it all. And it felt like it was the the opposite of what the messaging, it was the opposite of the message even that I had heard.
Yeah.
And when I heard you say that, what it did for me is I wanted to pause and think, okay, am I going about this in a way that maybe isn't serving me? Because if I'm getting told that I can have it all and I can do it all, then when I can't, I feel like a failure. Yeah. Or I feel like I'm letting people down, or there's guilt associated with it, or I'm not giving my business my all. Mm-hmm. So hearing that, like, I don't actually think we can have it all, what I think it ends up doing is it causes you to pause. It causes you to build your life in such a way that you can have all of the things that you know you need to have.
Yes.
Or that you want to have.
Yes.
Because I do think that is true. Because when I look at you and your life, I'm like, she has all that she wants to have. Yes. She has a very solid, secure relationship with her partner. She has a very intentional relationship with her kids. She has work that she's building a business, and she has a passion project within her business, so her business is fueling her. Mm-hmm. She's got connections, which you mentioned before, that's your safeguard for am I, how am I? And you have the physical piece because you're now checking in with your body. Like, am I okay? Do I need to alter things? So to me, that is having it all. And I think the reason why you've gotten there is from the understanding of you can't have everything.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. And I think just it's so easy to fall into striving for things that we think we should want or that other people want, and realizing that we get to define what success is. Like, we all only get this one precious, crazy life, right? So let's make it be what we want it to be. And that's not always easy to answer. Like, for me, it took a lot of self-reflection and journaling and talking to people. But to really figure out, like, what actually matters to me. If I look back at my life as that 80-year-old grandma on the porch, what are going to be the highlights that I'm going to be celebrating? And what are going to be the things that I realize actually didn't matter at all? And trying to do that on a quarterly and annual basis to recalibrate, because it's very, very easy. I do still have a people pleaser's heart, and it's very easy for somebody else to suck me into what matters to them. And not to say that I don't want to help people, I do, but I do also need to have that boundary of being true to what I feel called to, and to make sure that I'm not saying no to something that needs a yes because I've said yes to something that should have been a no. And it's not easy. I have to recalibrate all the time. But I think maybe too, like, having had that experience at a younger age and realizing how quick it all goes, and that if we're not being intentional, it's just over. So
you're talking about the burnout.
Yeah.
That having that early in life enabled you to correct course.
Yeah.
So that the things that matter could come to the forefront. Yeah. It sounds like wisdom talking.
I hope so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been so lovely to chat with you.
I appreciate your vulnerability and your openness and allowing us to see parts of your life. So thank you for sharing those. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity.